The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the first time in 3,000 years, and Ambassador Kael'thas of the Varinian Empire could already feel the weight of history pressing down on his crystalline shoulders. The chamber, carved from a hollowed-out moon orbiting the neutral space of Sector 0, hummed with the nervous energy of 247 species, each represented by their finest diplomats. Yet all eyes, whether compound, singular, or distributed across sensory stalks, were fixed on the empty space at the center of the chamber where a holographic display flickered to life. The image showed what remained of the Korvax trading station at the edge of the terminus expanse. Or rather, what didn't remain. Where once a thriving commercial hub had housed 15,000 beings, there was now only an expanding cloud of debris, each fragment catalogued and analyzed by the Council's investigative drones. The strange part wasn't the destruction itself. Wars happened, accidents occurred, and pirates occasionally got ambitious. The strange part was that nothing had touched the station. According to every sensor, every witness, and every scrap of recovered data, the station had simply stopped existing in that location and started existing somewhere else. Somewhere that happened to be inside a star. Counselor Vreth, a methane-breathing Calaxian whose environmental suit gave them the appearance of a floating jellyfish made of bronze and glass, activated their translator and spoke in resonant tones that echoed through the chamber. Esteemed representatives, this is the 17th incident in the past standard cycle. 17 stations, outposts, and vessels, relocated instantaneously across distances that should be impossible, appearing in stellar cores, inside planets, or scattered across light years of empty space. The pattern is undeniable. The signature is unmistakable. Vreth paused, and the silence grew heavy. Humanity has violated the covenant. The chamber erupted. Not in sound, the Council's translation matrix couldn't handle 247 species all shouting at once, but in a cascade of light, pheromones, electromagnetic pulses, and gravitational fluctuations that made the air itself seem to scream. Kael'thas remained still, his species having learned long ago that observation preceded understanding. He had studied the human question for decades, ever since the Covenant of Prohibited Development had been enacted 73 years ago. The covenant that had stripped humanity of their right to travel beyond their own solar system. The covenant that had been sold as mercy. 500 years ago, humanity had emerged from their little blue world with the enthusiasm of children and the weapons capacity of genocidal maniacs. They had developed fusion drives, particle weapons, and artificial intelligence at a pace that terrified the established powers. More concerning was their philosophical approach to problems. When faced with an obstacle, humans didn't go around it or negotiate with it. They broke it, repurposed it, or turned it into something that would break the next obstacle. Within a century, they had colonized their entire solar system using technology they barely understood, held together with what they called optimism and everyone else called reckless disregard for causality. The Council had watched with growing alarm as humanity began developing faster-than-light technology. Every other species had received FTL from the ancient precursors, inherited drives that warped space in carefully calculated ways that didn't damage the fundamental fabric of reality. Humanity, locked out of that legacy, had decided to build their own. Their early attempts had been catastrophic, ships arriving at their destinations millions of years early or late, crews aged to dust or not aged at all, and one memorable incident where a test vehicle had somehow arrived at its destination before it left, creating a causality loop that had taken the Council's best temporal mechanics 3 years to unravel. That's when the Council had intervened. Humanity was too dangerous, too unstable, too willing to break the universe to see what was inside. The Covenant had been unanimous. Humanity would be confined to their solar system, provided with standard precursor FTL technology only for vessels operated by Council observers, and forbidden from developing their own interstellar travel methods. In exchange, they would receive trade, cultural exchange, and the promise that one day, when they had matured, the restrictions might be lifted. Humanity had accepted with surprising grace. Their president, a woman named Sarich and who had the disturbing human ability to smile while making threats, had signed the covenant in front of representatives from every major power. She had shaken hands, that peculiar human gesture of displaying empty weapons, and had said something that Kael'thas still remembered: "We understand your concerns. We'll stay home. We'll be good." That had been 73 years ago, and in that time, humanity had been model prisoners. They traded fairly, shared their cultural exports, their music and stories proved disturbingly popular across the galaxy, and seemed content to develop their own system. Ships entering Sol space reported that humanity had transformed their asteroid belt into a network of habitats, built a ring around their star to capture its energy, and had even begun the insane project of disassembling their outermost planet to build what they called habitation spheres. It was ambitious but harmless. Contained. Until 17 cycles ago, when the impossible had begun. Kael'thas studied the data again while Counselor Vreth called for order. The pattern was there if you knew how to look. Every incident involved someone who had wronged humanity in some way. The Korvax station had been laundering profits from trade deals that cheated human merchants, a Zelthian military outpost had been testing biological weapons designed to target human genetics, a corporate mining vessel had been strip mining a system that humanity had specifically requested be preserved for its rare extremophile life forms. Each target had been carefully chosen, each destruction absolute, and each method impossible. The evidence pointed to a technology that could move objects through space instantaneously without using conventional FTL. Teleportation on a massive scale, with precision that could calculate the interior of a star as a destination. The physics alone should have been impossible. The energy requirements would need a significant fraction of a star's output. And humanity, locked in their system, supposedly couldn't have developed anything like it. They have broken the covenant, Vreth continued, having restored order. The penalty is clear. Humanity must be neutralized before they threaten the stability of the galaxy. Wait. The voice came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Liara of the Scythian Collective rarely spoke in council sessions, preferring to observe and report back to her queens. Her species, bipedal and mammalian like humans but evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity world, had been one of the few to abstain from the covenant vote. She stood now, her silver fur catching the light, her amber eyes sharp. We're assuming this is human-built technology. Has anyone confirmed humans are actually behind these incidents? Vretha's environmental suit pulsed with irritation. Who else could it be? The signature matches their early FTL experiments. The targets are all entities that have acted against human interests. And our intelligence suggests massive energy expenditures in the Sol system consistent with powering such a device. Intelligence suggests, Liara repeated, her tail swishing in what Kael'thas had learned was a sign of skepticism. I've read the reports. Human energy consumption has increased, yes, but it's consistent with their mega-engineering projects. As for the signature, it matches their old experiments from a century ago. Why would they use the same method? Humans are many things, but they're not stupid. If they wanted to hide an attack, they'd use something we wouldn't recognize. Kael'thas found himself agreeing. He had studied human tactical thinking as part of his doctoral thesis. Humans were deceptive when they needed to be, capable of elaborate misdirection. This felt too obvious, too clearly pointed at them. Unless they want us to know, he said aloud, surprised by his own voice. The chamber's attention shifted to him. Forgive the interruption, but Ambassador Liara raises a valid point. If this is a human weapon, it's a deterrent. They're demonstrating capability and precision. They're telling us they can reach out and touch anyone, anywhere, and our defenses mean nothing. Which is exactly why we must act now, Vreth insisted. Before they use this weapon on populated worlds. Before they hold the entire galaxy hostage. Or we could ask them. Every sensor and sensory organ in the chamber turned to the entrance, where a figure had just arrived. She was human, which was shocking enough. Humans were barred from council sessions. But more than that, she was dressed in what appeared to be a formal military uniform of deep blue, adorned with insignia that meant nothing to galactic standard databases. She was young by human standards, perhaps 30 of their years, with dark skin, darker eyes, and the kind of confident stride that came from either supreme authority or supreme foolishness. "I am Commander Amara Okonkwo of the Terran Strategic Initiative," she announced, her voice clear and unafraid despite being one fragile biped in a room full of species that could end her existence with minimal effort. "I'm here to present humanity's formal response to the Council's concerns." "You have no authority to be here," Vreth stated, but there was uncertainty in their resonance. "The Covenant forbids." "The Covenant forbids human vessels from leaving Sol System," Amara interrupted. "I didn't take a vessel. And before you ask how I got here, that's actually part of what I'm here to discuss. The Council has accused humanity of developing a weapon that violates galactic law." "You're half right. We built something. But it's not a weapon." She smiled, and Kael'thas felt a chill run through his crystalline structure. He had seen that smile in historical records. It was the smile of Saracen, 73 years ago. "It's so much worse than a weapon." The chamber exploded again in protest and demands, but Amara simply stood there, waiting with the infinite patience of someone holding all the cards. Finally, Vreth called for order and addressed her directly. "Explain yourself, human. How did you arrive here, and what is this device?" "I told you." "I didn't take a vessel," Amara repeated. "I walked. Well, stepped. The journey from Earth to this chamber took me approximately 4 seconds, and I didn't cross the space between at all. I went around it." She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small device, roughly the size of a human fist, that hummed with energy. "This is a personal displacement unit. PDU for short. We've been calling it other things too, jump drive, step gate, the cheat code, but the technical term is a pocket dimensional translator." Kael'thas felt his analytical mind racing. "You're not moving through space. You're moving through, what? Another dimension?" "Dimensions, plural," Amara confirmed, and her smile grew wider. "Turns out reality is like an onion. Layers upon layers, and if you know how to slip between them, you can step from anywhere to anywhere without crossing the space between. No FTL. No violation of the Covenant's exact wording. We're not traveling through space at all." "Impossible," Vreth stated flatly. "The energy requirements alone would require the energy output of a star," "Yes," Amara finished. "Which is why we built the Dyson swarm. 73 years is a long time, Counselor. Long enough to turn our entire civilization toward a single purpose. Long enough to do the math, run the experiments, and solve the equations that you never bothered with because you had precursor technology handed to you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop despite the environmental controls. "You locked us in our system and thought that was the end of it. You thought we'd just sit there, grateful for your mercy, waiting for permission to join the galaxy. But you forgot something important about humans." "What's that?" Liara asked, and Kael'thas noticed she was almost smiling. "We're really, really stubborn. And we don't like being told what we can't do." Vretha's environmental suit flickered with what might have been anger or fear. "You've been destroying Council assets. Killing thousands of beings. You admit to this?" "No," Amara said firmly. "We admit to building the technology. But those attacks? That wasn't us. We figured someone else had to have discovered dimensional translation. It's not exactly hidden physics, just really hard math, or someone was framing us. That's actually why I'm here. To warn you." "Warn us?" Kael'thas leaned forward. "About what?" "About what happens when you trap an entire species in a box for 73 years and tell them they're too dangerous to play with the rest of the galaxy." Amara's expression hardened. "We didn't just build dimensional translation. We built an entire civilization around it. Every human, and I mean every single one of our 42 billion people, has access to PDU technology. We can step to any location we can calculate. We've mapped the galaxy in ways you can't imagine. We've seeded backup colonies in dimensions adjacent to reality where you'll never find them. We've created an economy, a military, a society that exists outside your laws, your censors, and your control. The implications crash through the chamber like a tidal wave. An entire civilization that could appear anywhere, anytime, undetectable until they chose to reveal themselves. No borders could contain them. No defenses could stop them. No monitoring could track them. You've made yourselves into ghosts, Kael'thas whispered. We've made ourselves free, Amara corrected. But here's the thing, we don't want war. Despite what you think of us, humans actually prefer peace. It's more profitable, more interesting, and lets us focus on the science and art and all the things we actually care about. So we were content to stay quiet, to slowly integrate into galactic society through the back door, so to speak. But someone is using our signature to attack Council assets. Someone wants you to think we're the threat. Why should we believe you? Vreth demanded. You admit to violating the spirit of the Covenant, to developing technology in secret, to creating a civilization beyond Council oversight. You could simply be trying to avoid the consequences of your actions. You shouldn't believe me based on my word, Amara agreed. You should believe me based on logic. If we wanted to attack you, you'd already be dead. Every council member in this chamber, every ship in your fleets, every station and habitat and homeworld, we've mapped them all. We could strike everywhere simultaneously, and you'd never see it coming. The fact that you're all still breathing proves we're not your enemy. She paused, letting that sink in. But someone is. Someone with either our technology or something close enough to mimic it. And they're trying to start a war between humanity and the Council. Liara stood again. Who? And why? We don't know yet, Amara admitted. Our intelligence is good, but we've been focused on exploration and development, not counterintelligence. However, we'd like to find out. Which brings me to my proposal. She looked directly at Vreth. Humanity offers a temporary alliance with the Council. We share our tracking data, you share your intelligence networks. We work together to find whoever's really behind the attacks. In exchange, humanity requests a renegotiation of the Covenant. Never, Vreth stated. Humanity has proven exactly why the Covenant was necessary. You're unstable, dangerous, and we're already out here, Amara interrupted. You can keep the Covenant in place and pretend it means something, or you can acknowledge reality and work with us to establish new terms that actually reflect the current situation. Your choice. But make it fast, because whoever's attacking is escalating. The targets are getting bigger, the casualties higher. How long before they hit a colony world? A home world? Kael'thas studied the human commander, analyzing her micro-expressions, her posture, her tone. Everything indicated she was being truthful, or at least believed she was being truthful. But more than that, she was right. The attacks were escalating. The 17th incident had destroyed a station with 15,000 beings, the first had been a small outpost with only a few hundred. That suggested either growing confidence or growing desperation from whoever was responsible. I support opening negotiations, he announced, surprising himself again. Ambassador Okonkwo raises valid points. Whether we like it or not, humanity has achieved functional independence from the Covenant. We can either adapt to that reality or waste resources on a conflict we cannot win. The Varinian Empire sides with terrorists? Vretha's resonance was accusatory. The Varinian Empire sides with survival, Kael'thas countered. And I suggest we focus on the immediate threat rather than fighting the last war. Liara nodded. The Scythian Collective agrees. We propose a temporary intelligence sharing agreement with Earth, limited to identifying and stopping the current attacks. The question of the Covenant can be addressed afterward. Other voices joined in, some supporting, others opposing, the chamber descending into managed chaos as alliances formed and broke along ancient lines. Kael'thas watched Amara through it all, noting how she remained calm, confident. She had expected this response, had probably wargamed a dozen scenarios before stepping into the chamber. Humans. Finally, Vreth called for a vote. The chamber's systems tallied the results instantly, 141 in favor of temporary cooperation, 98 opposed, 8 abstaining. A narrow majority, but enough. Very well, Vreth announced, their tone making it clear this decision pained them. Humanity will be granted provisional cooperation status for the duration of this crisis. Ambassador Okonkwo, you will coordinate with Council security and share all relevant data regarding these attacks. Agreed, Amara said. I'll need access to incident reports, sensor logs, and any intelligence you have on groups that might have the resources to develop dimensional technology. I'll also need a liaison from Council security who's actually competent and not just a political appointment. I volunteer, Liara said immediately. The collective has experience with unconventional threats, and I'm already familiar with human psychology. She looked at Amara with what might have been respect. Plus, I'm curious to see how you people managed to do in 70 years what the Council couldn't do in 10,000. We had motivation, Amara replied. And spite. Never underestimate what humans can accomplish when they're angry. She turned to address the full chamber. I'll begin uploading our tracking data to Council security immediately. In the meantime, I suggest you all upgrade your security. If someone has dimensional technology, nowhere is safe. Not your ships, not your stations, not your bedrooms. They can reach anywhere, just like we can. With that cheerful thought, she tapped the device on her belt and simply ceased to exist, vanishing without sound or flash of light, leaving behind only a room full of shocked dignitaries and the growing realization that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Kael'thas remained in his seat long after the others had filed out, reviewing the data, analyzing the patterns. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone was playing a dangerous game, using humanity's own innovations against them to trigger a war. But why? What did anyone gain from conflict between humanity and the Council? His personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. Encrypted, routed through 17 proxies, and tagged with a human signature. He opened it. Ambassador Kael'thas, your analysis in the chamber was accurate and appreciated. If you're interested in seeing what humanity has actually built, I can arrange a tour. Consider it a gesture of goodwill between our peoples. The coordinates attached will bring you to a neutral meeting point. Come alone, come armed if it makes you feel safer, but come curious. We have much to discuss. Commander Okonkwo. Kael'thas stared at the message for a long moment, his analytical mind warring with his survival instincts. Accepting could be walking into a trap. Refusing could mean missing crucial intelligence. But more than that, he realized, he genuinely wanted to see what humanity had accomplished. Wanted to understand these bizarre, brilliant, terrifying apes who had taken 73 years of imprisonment and turned it into an advantage. He composed his reply, I accept. When? The response came instantly, now works. Step through. A portal of shimmering light opened in front of him, a Terran reality that showed another place beyond. Through it, he could see Amara Okonkwo standing in what appeared to be an observation deck, with a view that made his crystalline structure resonate with awe. Taking what his species considered a deep breath, Ambassador Kael'thas stepped through into humanity's secret, and into a partnership that would change everything. The transition through the portal felt like falling through layers of crystalline silk, each dimension brushing against Kael'thas's consciousness with textures that shouldn't exist. The journey lasted less than a heartbeat, but in that moment, he perceived 17 different versions of reality stacked like translucent sheets, each one showing a slightly different configuration of matter and energy. Then he was through, standing on solid ground, his sensory organs struggling to process what lay before him. The observation deck stretched 100 meters in every direction, its transparent floor revealing the infrastructure below. But it was the view beyond that stole his capacity for rational thought. He stood inside a structure that defied scale, a lattice of interconnected rings, spheres, and geometric shapes that extended in every direction, disappearing into the distance like a city built by mathematics itself. Streams of light flowed through translucent tubes, carrying what appeared to be data or perhaps matter itself. Habitation spheres the size of moons dotted the construct, connected by bridges that shimmered with the same dimensional energy as the portal he'd just traversed. And beyond it all, providing light and power, burned Sol, Earth's sun, wrapped in a swarm of energy collectors so dense it looked like the star wore a coat of glittering diamonds. "Welcome to the labyrinth," Amara said, standing beside him with her hands clasped behind her back in a military posture that somehow seemed relaxed. "Humanity's real home for the past 7 decades. Population, 42 billion and change. Spanning 17 adjacent dimensional layers, occupying the same spatial coordinates but existing in parallel reality states. From your dimension, most of it's invisible. Sensors just see our old habitats in the asteroid belt and assume that's all there is." Kael'thas tried to formulate a response, but his translator kept failing to find adequate words in any of the 200 languages he spoke. Finally, he managed, "How is this possible? The engineering alone would require resources beyond what one solar system could provide." Amara finished with a knowing smile. "True, if you're only working in one dimension. But when you can reach into adjacent realities and extract raw materials from uninhabited parallel Earths, or harvest energy from stars that exist in dimensions where biological life never evolved, your resource limitations become more about logistics than scarcity." She gestured to the sprawling megastructure. "We had 73 years, Ambassador. 73 years of the smartest, most motivated species in the galaxy being told they couldn't leave their room. So we made our room bigger. Much bigger." A figure approached from deeper in the observation deck, and Kael'thas's attention shifted. She was human, like Amara, but where the commander carried herself with military precision, this woman moved with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to variable gravity environments. She was tall for a human female, with skin the color of warm copper and hair that cascaded in silver-white waves, clearly modified, as humans didn't naturally express such pigmentation. But it was her eyes that caught him, one brown, one a brilliant blue, both enhanced with subtle circuitry that marked her as heavily augmented. "Ambassador Kael'thas, meet Dr. Zara Vasquez," Amara introduced. "Chief of Dimensional Physics and the woman who made all this possible. Zara, this is the Varinian ambassador. Try not to overwhelm him with technical details for at least 5 minutes." Zara's laugh was warm and genuine. "I make no promises. It's not every day we get to show off to someone who might actually appreciate the mathematics involved." She extended her hand in the human greeting gesture, and after a moment's hesitation, Kael'thas reached out with his own crystalline appendage. The touch sent a small static charge between them. His species communicated through harmonic resonances that sometimes translated as mild electrical discharge, and he felt her augmented nervous system register the sensation with what the human micro-expressions suggested was pleasant surprise. "Your bioenhancements," he observed, his analytical nature reasserting itself. "They're integrated at a cellular level. This isn't standard human augmentation." "Nothing about us is standard anymore," Zara replied, not releasing his hand immediately. "When you're working across dimensional barriers, baseline human neurology doesn't cut it. Our brains process reality in 3 spatial dimensions plus time. To perceive and navigate 17-dimensional space, we needed upgrades. Hence," she gestured to herself, "the new and improved humanity, version 2.4. We're still us, just expanded." Amara cleared her throat. "Zara, before you and the ambassador disappear into theoretical physics discussions, we have a situation to address." "The investigation?" "Right, yes." Zara reluctantly released Kael'thas's hand and activated a holographic display that materialized in the air between them. The data streams coalesced into a 3-dimensional map of known space, with the 17 attack sites marked in pulsing red. "We've been analyzing the dimensional signatures from each incident. Whoever's doing this is using technology similar to ours but not identical. The dimensional frequencies are offset by approximately 0.3%, close enough to mimic our signature to standard sensors but distinct enough that we can tell the difference." Kael'thas studied the display, his mind already working through the implications. "If the technology isn't yours, then someone else achieved dimensional translation independently, or someone stole our research," Zara confirmed grimly. We've been careful, but we're not naive. 42 billion people knowing about dimensional tech means information security becomes statistical probability rather than certainty. Someone could have leaked, sold out, or been compromised. There's another option, Kaldas offered. You said you've been exploring adjacent dimensions. What if you encountered someone already there? Another civilization that developed this technology independently? The two human women exchanged glances that carried entire conversations and micro-expressions. Finally, Amara nodded. Show him. Zara manipulated the display, and new data flooded in. Images of structures in adjacent dimensions, ruins of civilizations that had risen and fallen in realities parallel to the known galaxy. We found them 6 years ago, she explained quietly. The predecessors, that's what we call them. Not the precursors your council reveres, but something else. Something older. They existed across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, built cities that spanned reality states, achieved technology that makes our dimensional translation look like banging rocks together. Existed, Kaldas repeated, noting the past tense. Something destroyed them, Amara said. We don't know what. We've explored 17 of their city structures, each one spanning multiple dimensions, each one dead for what our dating suggests is approximately 50,000 years. No bodies, no signs of battle, just empty cities and inactive technology. It's like they all just left. Or were erased, Zara added, and something in her voice made Kaldas's crystalline structure resonate with unease. Some of the dimensional readings we've found suggest reality manipulation on scales we can barely comprehend. Entire probability streams collapsed, causality loops terminated mid-sequence, timelines that simply end. Whatever happened to the predecessors, it was thorough enough to remove them from existence across multiple reality states simultaneously. Kaldas processed this information, feeling the foundations of his understanding of the universe shifting. And you think this connects to the current attacks? We think someone found predecessor technology and is using it, Amara confirmed. The dimensional offset in the attack signatures matches readings we've gotten from some of the predecessor ruins. Someone's using their tech, either because they don't have access to ours or because they want to make it look like they don't. Who has the resources to explore adjacent dimensions besides humanity? Kaldas asked. That's the question that's been keeping me awake for the past 3 weeks, Zara said, manipulating the display to show a new data set. It would require significant energy generation, advanced theoretical physics, and the willingness to risk dimensional instability. The number of civilizations that meet all 3 criteria is. She paused, her enhanced eyes widening. Oh no. What? Amara and Kaldas asked simultaneously. Zara's fingers flew through the holographic interface, pulling up energy consumption data from across the galaxy. I've been focused on who could do this technologically, but I didn't think about who would be motivated. Ambassador, your people, the Varinians, your crystalline silicon-based life forms, correct? Your consciousness exists as harmonic resonances through your physical structure? Yes, Kaldas confirmed, uncertain where this was leading. Our thought patterns are essentially complex vibrations. Why? Because dimensional barriers are fundamentally harmonic in nature, Zara explained, her words coming faster now. Different frequencies for different reality layers. A species that thinks in harmonics would have an intuitive understanding of dimensional physics that carbon-based life forms like humans lack. We had to build computational aids and get brain augmentations to perceive it. You'd be able to feel it naturally. The implication hit Kaldas like a physical blow. You think my people are responsible? Not your people, Amara said carefully, her hand moving to rest on the weapon at her hip in a gesture that seemed unconscious. But someone from your species. Zara, show him the energy consumption data. The display shifted to show power usage across Varinian space. Most of it was consistent with normal civilian and industrial application, but one station, a remote research facility orbiting a dying red giant, showed energy consumption that had been steadily increasing over the past standard year. The curve matched the escalation pattern of the attacks almost perfectly. The Crimson Archive, Kaldas breathed, his harmonics taking on tones of horror. It's a theoretical physics research station, operated by the Varinian Scientific Collective. They've been studying exotic energy states and his consciousness fragmented momentarily as the pieces fell into place. And harmonic resonance across dimensional barriers. They published a paper 5 years ago that I dismissed as speculative nonsense. They theorized that consciousness itself could be used to navigate dimensional layers without mechanical aids. Let me guess, Amara said. The council rejected their findings? Told them to focus on more practical research? Worse, Kael'thas admitted. Councillor Vreth specifically censured them for dangerous speculation that could undermine confidence in precursor-based technology. The research team was threatened with defunding and professional disgrace if they continued. He felt the weight of collective failure settling on his structure. We drove them to this. The Council's insistence on maintaining the primacy of precursor technology, on preventing any civilization from developing alternatives, made anyone who succeeded into an enemy of the state, Zara finished. So they decided to become exactly that. Frame humanity, trigger a war between us and the Council, and in the chaos. She trailed off, her enhanced mind clearly racing through possibilities. And in the chaos, they reveal themselves as the ones who can stop the human threat, Amara concluded. They become heroes instead of outcasts, prove their technology superior, and reshape the galactic power structure with themselves at the center. Kael'thas wanted to deny it, wanted to believe his people incapable of such calculated violence. But he had studied the lead researcher at the Crimson Archive, a brilliant but bitter scientist named Velkoth who had spent 2 centuries being dismissed by the establishment, watching lesser minds receive accolades for derivative work while his innovations were suppressed. Given the right motivation and the wrong tools, anyone could become a monster. We need to move fast, he said, surprised by the certainty in his harmonic tones. If Velkoth realizes we've identified him, he'll accelerate his timeline. The next attack will be catastrophic, designed to force the Council into declaring war on humanity. Then let's not give him the chance, Amara replied. Zara, can you calculate a dimensional jump to the Crimson Archive? Already done, Zara said, her augmented eyes displaying data streams that only she could see. But there's a problem. The facility exists partially in our dimension and partially in at least 3 adjacent layers. If Velkoth has full control of dimensional technology, he could collapse the barriers while we're mid-transition. We'd be scattered across reality states, dead before we knew it. So we need a backdoor approach, Amara mused. Ambassador, you have access codes to Varinian facilities, correct? Standard diplomatic credentials? Kael'thas understood immediately. Yes. As a Council ambassador, I can request access to any research station for inspection purposes. But he'll know something's wrong if I arrive without proper channels being followed, without advance notice. You won't be arriving, Zara interrupted, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You'll already be there. One of the tricks we've learned about dimensional translation, you can step not just through space but through time, as long as you stay within your own probability stream. We send you back to yesterday, when you legitimately could have been conducting a routine inspection. You get inside using proper channels, verify the situation, and give us a dimensional anchor point to lock onto. Then we come through and shut this down. That's insane, Kael'thas protested. Temporal mechanics are barely understood. The causality implications alone are well within safe parameters, Zara assured him. We've done this hundreds of times. As long as you don't interact with your past self or create a grandfather paradox, the timeline remains stable. You'll exist in a closed loop, we send you back, you establish the anchor point in the past, which allows us to arrive in the present with perfect positioning. Amara stepped closer to Kael'thas, her expression serious. I won't lie to you, Ambassador. This is dangerous. If something goes wrong, you could be erased from the timeline, trapped in a dimensional pocket, or worse. But you're uniquely qualified for this. You're a respected council member investigating a fellow Varinian facility. You won't raise suspicions. And She paused. If we're right, Velkoth is about to kill millions of beings to prove a point. We have to stop him. Kael'thas looked between the two human women, Amara with her military confidence, Zara with her scientific brilliance, and felt something shift in his fundamental understanding of the galaxy. For millennia, his people had prided themselves on their analytical superiority, their crystalline clarity of thought. But these humans, these supposedly primitive and reckless apes, had achieved in decades what the Council couldn't accomplish in ages. Not through superior genetics or ancient inherited technology, but through determination, creativity, and the willingness to attempt the impossible. More than that, he realized with something like surprise, he trusted them. Trusted Amara's tactical assessment, trusted Zara's calculations, trusted that they genuinely wanted to prevent catastrophe rather than cause it. How do we proceed? He asked. Zara's smile broadened, and she pulled a device from her pocket, similar to the PDU Amara had demonstrated in the council chamber but more complex, with additional components that pulsed with soft light. This is a temporal spatial displacement unit. TSDU. I'll calibrate it for your specific harmonic signature and set the coordinates for the Crimson Archive, 27 hours in the past. You'll arrive in an unmonitored section of the facility's docking area. Make your way to the main research level, conduct a normal inspection, and when you find evidence of what Velkoth is doing, activate the TSDU's beacon function. That creates an anchor point we can lock onto across both space and time. And if I'm discovered? If Velkoth realizes what I'm doing? Then you run, Amara said bluntly. The TSDU has an emergency extraction function. It'll pull you back to the present into this location regardless of dimensional barriers. It's not pleasant, feels like being turned inside out through your own consciousness, but it beats being dead. Kael'thas accepted the device, feeling the weight of it in his crystalline appendages. And what will you be doing while I'm in the past? Preparing, Amara replied. If your inspection 27 hours ago gives us the anchor point we need, we'll assemble a strike team and move on the archive in our present. From your perspective, you'll activate the beacon and we'll arrive within minutes. From our perspective, we'll have had over a day to prepare. Temporal mechanics make my structure ache, Kael'thas admitted. Zara laughed, and the sound was like music, harmonic frequencies that resonated with his own consciousness in ways he hadn't known were possible. You get used to it. The trick is not to think linearly. Time isn't a river flowing in one direction, it's more like a crystal with multiple facets, each one reflecting a slightly different configuration of events. You're not changing the past, you're fulfilling it. The version of history where you conducted that inspection yesterday has always existed. We're just making sure you're there to experience it. She stepped closer, adjusting the TSDU's settings with practiced efficiency, her fingers occasionally brushing against his crystalline surface. Each touch sent small harmonic resonances through his structure, and he found himself analyzing the sensation with unusual focus. Humans weren't supposed to be able to affect Varinian emotional states, their biology was too different, their methods of communication too alien. Yet something about Zara's presence, her casual competence and genuine enthusiasm for the science they were discussing, created harmonics in his consciousness that felt remarkably like what his people called attraction. There, she said, stepping back to examine her work. Calibrated and ready. You'll arrive exactly 27 hours, 14 minutes ago, relative to our current position. The TSDU will automatically cloak you in dimensional noise, you'll appear normal to standard sensors but slightly out of phase with baseline reality. Makes you basically invisible to anything less sophisticated than our detection systems. Convenient, Kael'thas observed. Essential, Zara corrected. We've had 73 years to prepare for every possible scenario. Stealth dimensional phasing was developed in the first decade. We figured if the galaxy wanted to pretend we didn't exist, we'd make it true. Her expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Ambassador, not all of us are bitter about the Covenant. Some of humanity's greatest achievements came from working within those restrictions. Necessity and invention and all that. But you're still angry, Kael'thas observed. We're human, Amara interjected. We're always a little angry. But we're also pragmatic. Right now, proving we can work with the Council is more valuable than nursing grudges. Speaking of which, she checked a display on her wrist. We're running out of time. If our analysis is correct, Velkotha's energy consumption pattern suggests he's building toward another attack within the next few hours. Something big. Kael'thas felt the weight of responsibility settling on his structure. One of his own people, driven by bitterness and ambition, was about to commit an atrocity. And only he, aided by the very species his people had helped imprison, could stop it. I'm ready, he said, though he wasn't certain it was true. Zara reached out and placed her hand gently on his crystalline surface, and this time the harmonic resonance that passed between them felt deliberate. Be careful in there, she said softly. And come back safe. I'd very much like to continue our conversation about dimensional physics. Maybe over whatever passes for dinner in your species? Despite the danger, despite the weight of impending catastrophe, Kael'thas felt his harmonics shift into patterns that approximated humor. Dr. Vasquez, are you using an impending temporal mission as an excuse to arrange a social engagement? Absolutely, she confirmed without hesitation. Humans are excellent at multitasking. Amara rolled her eyes. Zara, you're compromising operational security with interpersonal dynamics again. I'm providing motivation for mission success, Zara countered. Entirely professional. Nothing about you is professional. You say that like it's a bad thing. Kael'thas found himself experiencing something his people rarely felt, genuine affection for beings of another species. These humans, with their casual banter in the face of danger, their ability to find humor in dire circumstances, their remarkable capacity to build wonders from restrictions, they were extraordinary in ways the Council had never bothered to understand. I accept your invitation, he told Zara. Pending, of course, our mutual survival of the next several hours. It's a date, she confirmed with a grin. Amara sighed but was smiling. All right, enough romantic tension. Ambassador, activate the TSDU when you're ready. We'll be monitoring from here, but we can't communicate across the temporal barrier. You'll be on your own until you activate the beacon. Kael'thas looked at the device in his appendages, then at the two human women who had placed their trust in him, then out at the impossible megastructure humanity had built from defiance and determination. Somewhere in the galaxy, one of his own people was about to commit atrocity. But here, in this moment, he had the chance to prove that not all Varinians valued pride over life, tradition over truth. He activated the TSDU. Reality folded. The sensation was unlike anything Kael'thas had experienced. His consciousness stretched across temporal dimensions, perceiving past, present, and possible futures simultaneously. He saw the moment of his arrival overlapping with the moment of his departure, saw Zara and Amara watching him vanish while simultaneously preparing for the mission that his past actions would enable. Causality became a closed circle, elegant and terrifying. Then he was standing in the docking bay of the Crimson Archive, 27 hours ago, surrounded by the familiar architecture of Varinian design. His TSDU indicated successful temporal transition, and the facility's security systems showed no alerts. To everyone here, he was simply Ambassador Kael'thas, conducting a routine inspection. Except ahead, in the research levels, Velkoth was preparing to kill millions. And only Kael'thas stood between intention and atrocity. Taking the Varinian equivalent of a steadying breath, he harmonized his consciousness to project calm authority and began walking deeper into the facility, into the past, toward a confrontation that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Behind him, 27 hours forward in time, Amara and Zara watched the temporal readings and prepared their strike team, trusting that the strange crystalline ambassador would succeed in a mission that defied every conventional understanding of possibility. In the space between moments, across the barriers of reality itself, the stage was set for humanity to prove once and for all that being banned from interstellar travel had been the galaxy's biggest mistake. And its greatest gift.